You ever just stop and think, how did we get here? I mean, not just you and me, but all of this, everything. It all started with a single tiny cell. And somehow, that cell led to us, a species that can actually look back and ask that question. It's this incredible 4 billion years story of survival, and it's our story. So let's dive in.
I mean, this is the big one, right? The ultimate question. You look around at all the amazing, weird, wonderful life on this planet, and you have to wonder, how did we, our species, end up in the driver's seat? Well, the answer isn't simple, that's for sure. It's a story that kicks off billions of years ago, and honestly, it's wilder than any science fiction you can imagine.
Okay, so here's the 30,000-foot view. Our story starts 4 billion years ago with that first cell. Fast forward a long time and boom, 365 million years ago, our ancestors crawl onto land. Then, way later, about 2.3 million years ago, we see the first tools. And all of that, every step, leads to right now, to us. It's a huge timeline. So let's jump into Chapter 1.
All right, Section 1, the first spark. We're talking about going from a ball of fire to the first living cell. And you gotta understand, the early Earth was, well, it was basically hell. Forget blue oceans and green land. Think molten rock, a boiling ball of lava covered in gas and dust. It's the last place you'd expect to find life. And yet, somehow, this is exactly where our story begins.
So, the billion-dollar question, where did that first spark of life actually come from? Well, scientists have two main ideas. Theory 1 is that life came from space, hitching a ride on a meteorite. Theory 2 is that it was homegrown, right here on Earth, a kind of magical spark in the chemical soup of the ancient oceans. The truth is, we still don't know for sure, but what we do know is what happened right after that spark.
And here it is. This is our oldest, most distant ancestor, a single, simple cell just floating around in the ocean about 4 billion years ago. But inside that tiny little thing was the most powerful code in the universe, DNA. Think of it as the ultimate instruction manual, the blueprint for every single living thing that was ever going to exist, including you and me.
And then, not much happened. For 2 billion years. That's almost half of Earth's entire history. Life was just simple. Cells made copies of themselves. That's it. Over and over, just passing down their DNA with tiny little changes here and there. It sounds boring, I know, but those tiny, slow changes, they were the engine that was going to drive everything that came next. Okay, Section 2, From Water to Land. And I love this subtitle, The Greatest Escape in History, because after those 2 billion quiet years, the pace really starts to pick up. Life gets more complex, and suddenly the oceans are a very dangerous neighborhood. It's a classic eat or be eaten world. And that pressure cooker environment is what forced our ancestors to make the most incredible move in the history of life.
So if you're gonna survive in those ancient oceans, you need a serious toolkit. And that's exactly what our ancestors started to build. First up, eyes. They developed these simple little spots that could detect light, which was a total game changer for spotting danger. Then, they needed something to make sense of all that visual info, so a small brain started to form. And finally, to avoid becoming someone else's lunch, they evolved tough skin, like a natural suit of armor.
But here's the thing, the predators were getting bigger and smarter too. So what do? The only way out was up. Our ancestors started hanging out in the shallow water to hide from the big guys, but the water there didn't have much oxygen. So, about 375 million years ago, they did something absolutely revolutionary. They poked their heads above the surface and took a breath of air. That desperate move led to the evolution of lungs, and suddenly, an entirely new world opened up.
All right, Section 3, Surviving Catastrophe, or When the World Ended, twice. So our ancestors made it to land. They'd conquered a new frontier. But the planet itself, it had other plans. It's like nature was a ticking time bomb, and our family line was about to get hit by not one, but 2 planet-killing events that would almost wipe the slate clean.
So 250 million years ago, Siberia basically explodes with volcanoes. They just spew poison into the atmosphere, causing this insane global warming. They call it the Great Dying. And just look at that number, 95%. That means 19 out of every 20 species on the entire planet, gone. The only reason we're here today is because our ancestors were in that lucky 5% that somehow, against all odds, made it through. After that first big extinction, a new group of animals took over the planet. You might have heard of them, the dinosaurs. And for millions and millions of years, they were the kings. No question. But then, 65 million years ago, a rock the size of a mountain hits the Earth, and just like that, game over for the dinosaurs. Their worst day ever was, believe it or not, the single greatest opportunity our ancestors would ever get.
So how on earth did our little mammal ancestors survive in a world full of giant, hungry dinosaurs? Simple. They did everything the dinosaurs didn't. They stayed small, they came out at night when the big guys were sleeping, and crucially, they learned to live underground in burrows. It was the perfect strategy. Not only did it keep them off the menu, but when that asteroid hit, being underground is what saved them from all the fire and chaos on the surface.
Okay, Section 4, the human blueprint. This is where we start standing up and getting smart. With the dinosaurs finally out of the picture, the coast was clear for mammals like us to take over. And our story really starts to focus in now on the direct path to becoming human. It all boils down to two huge changes. We stood up, and our brains just exploded in size.
Now, we didn't just wake up one day and decide to walk on two legs. We were forced into it. The climate changed in Africa, and the big forests started to shrink, replaced by wide-open grasslands. So our ancestors had to come down from the trees to find food. And it turns out, walking upright is way more efficient for covering long distances. But the most important part? It freed up our hands for the very first time.
So what do you do with a brand new pair of free hands? You start making stuff. You start using tools. And this new lifestyle, this problem-solving, tool-making life demanded more and more brain power. And that's when you get this brain explosion. Our earliest ancestor's brain was about the size of an orange. But then look at Homo habilis. It's already twice as big. And our modern brain? 3 times bigger. It's just this incredible rapid growth. So let's meet this ancestor, Homo habilis, or as he's nicknamed, the handyman. And for good reason. Showing up around 2.3 million years ago, this is the first guy in our family tree who is systematically making stone tools. And think about what that means. It's not just about banging rocks together. It's about looking at a rock and imagining what it could be. That's the beginning of planning, of foresight, of technology itself.
And that brings us to our final section, Masters of the Planet, how we went on to conquer the world. So we've got bigger brains, we've got tools, the final crucial pieces of the puzzle are about to click into place. And it's these next two breakthroughs that are going to take us from being just another smart animal to the dominant species on Earth.
Just try to imagine this for a second. For your entire existence, for millions of years, you've been at the mercy of the world, scared of the dark, freezing in the cold, hiding from predators. And then you figure out how to control fire. You capture lightning. It's like the quote says, for the first time, a force of nature was ours to command. Fire wasn't just a thing that happened anymore, it was a tool. And fire was a total game changer. I mean, obviously, it gave us warmth, it kept the big scary things away at night, but its most powerful secret? Cooking. When you cook your food, it's way easier for your body to digest and get energy from it. And all that extra easy energy had to go somewhere. Where did it go? Straight to powering our bigger, smarter, and very, very energy-hungry brains.
The last piece of the puzzle was a tiny little biological accident. A random genetic mutation tweaked the muscles in our throat. And that little change suddenly allowed us to make a whole new range of complex sounds. It was basically the hardware upgrade we needed for speech. And with speech, we could suddenly work together in complex ways, plan things out, and, most importantly, pass our knowledge down from one generation to the next.
And once you put all those things together, big brains, tools, fire, and language, it's like strapping a rocket to our evolution. Our progress just goes vertical. It took millions of years to get to stone tools and group hunting, but then look at how fast things happen at the end. Farming starts just 10,000 years ago, and the moon landing, a mere 50 years ago. After billions of years of crawling, we were suddenly in an all-out sprint.
So there you have it, 4 billion years, from a single cell to a species that can build rockets and wonder about its own past. We fought, we adapted, we survived against absolutely insane odds to become what we are today. We are, for better or worse, the masters of this planet. But all of this just leads to one last, giant question, doesn't it? After seeing how life conquered the Earth, you have to wonder, how did the Earth become the perfect home